Psychometrics has a really long history with the study and assessment of intelligence. Going way back to the 4th century BC in China, psychometric assessments were first developed as a kind of meritocracy to see which individuals deserved the right to work in public functions. This opened later, much later, the opportunity that who goes to university and who is allowed to access education became no longer something about how wealthy your parents were or where you were born. It could also be based on your scores, your ability. And therefore, intelligence testing has a very long and important history in developing meritocratic and democratic societies. With the advent of big data and artificial intelligence, the assessment of cognitive skills such as intelligence, but also psychological skills like personality, values, and emotions has become much more complex. So now we have access to much more information about the kinds of behaviors that humans engage in, what challenges them, what makes them tick, what elicits the right emotions or the wrong emotions. And we also have tools and algorithms that can elicit some of those emotions, that can predict when behavior will happen in the future, and potentially which can also manipulate or bring a behavior about. So we've heard a lot in the last year or two about the potential uses of artificial intelligences and machine learning techniques for the manipulation of opinion and the control of the public or the control of information. But I think there are many other very positive applications as well. So whether that be online adaptive testing to have more accurate, shorter exams for students in schools so they can focus their time on where it's really important, whether it be in solving some of the world's biggest challenges around environmental protection, wealth inequality, health innovation, using AI to solve or look for cures for very difficult to understand diseases. I think AI has a lot of potential to be used for good as well as for manipulation. As someone working in psychometrics, we come at it from maybe a little bit different perspective than the computer science tradition. We're particularly interested in studying the extent to which the AI can actually pick up on psychological signals, even though it might not know that's what it's predicting. So an AI program to maximize profit can very quickly realize that finding out someone's personality or their gender or their ethnicity or their emotional disposition can increase the profit of whatever content's being marketed. But we'd like that computer or that algorithm to know that what it's doing is a form of psychological assessment. We'd like it to be able to explain itself to the user and say, this is who I think you are. Do you agree? Have a dialogue with me. And transparency in the area of AI is very, very important and still quite a new area, I think, for most companies and researchers working in the space. So as psychometricians, we very much try to see AI in the historical context in which it has developed and look into doing more research on the interactions between humans and computers in cyberspace, which is growing ever more complex and interesting. Nowadays, policymakers are starting to talk about the problems that algorithmic bias is having in society, both in the present and in the future. This is a really, really important conversation for people to be engaging in. And it's, in a sense, one we could have anticipated, because it's in the nature of algorithms that their function is to look at past behavior, past data, find the patterns within that, and use those patterns that it has found to try and predict some future outcome or future behavior. The problem we have is that most of the data going into those AI systems, whether it be predictive policing systems, whether it be advertising systems, whether it be systems that decide who gets into educational institutions or who's entitled to social care or health benefits, the data going into those systems is in itself biased. That is because we as humans are not perfect and our society is biased in many, many different ways. Some of those ways we can accept as being a natural part of living together and having our diversity, and others are the kinds of biases or discriminations that we'd actually like to actively tackle. So if we see that there's gender discrimination in the workplace, we can design AI systems that address and correct for that past discrimination and start to make recommendations for the future that are not only a replication of the past, but actually an improvement on that collective past that we have. So I would be very enthusiastic to think about a future in which the development of AI, from the kind of very basic problem of what data to train the model on, involves a much more multidisciplinary approach than purely trying to predict as accurately as possible. We need to be engaging sociologists, philosophers, ethicists, artists, engineers, psychologists, computer scientists, and everyone else, everybody whose voice hasn't been represented in the data of the past. In this way, we can build fairer and less biased AI systems.